Welcome to The Deep Dive, where we take your stack of sources and pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight. Today, we're diving into some truly out of this world material, a collection of videos and commentary that centers on recent unidentified aerial phenomena, often called UFOs or, UAPs. Our sources for this deep dive, they come primarily from user-submitted videos, analysis too, featured on channels like Third Phase of Moon and Disclosure Radio. Our mission today is really to unpack these specific claims, these alleged sightings presented in the material, and explore the perspectives, the interpretations shared by the commentators themselves.
Yeah, and this particular set of sources, it gives us a fascinating look into how certain narratives around UAPs get constructed, and crucially, how they're reinforced. It really prompts us to consider the very nature of eyewitness accounts, right? And the inherent challenges of identifying unexplained objects just from, limited visual data. Plus, the strong, often really definitive claims made about things like information control and advanced technology. What's particularly interesting, I think, is how these sources frequently present their interpretations as just undeniable proof. Even when the underlying visual evidence might seem maybe to a more dispassionate observer, open to multiple readings, it's almost less about the object itself and more about the story being woven around it.
Okay, all right, let's unpack this first submission then. It takes us directly into space, specifically to the International Space Station. This is during what the source refers to as the third phase of Moon. The video focuses on a moment near the Bigelow Expanded Activity Module, the beam, that inflatable experimental habitat.
Attached to the ISS.
Exactly. So the source claims an unidentified flying object was observed incredibly close to the ISS, right there near the beam. And the object itself is described as having a very distinct triangular shape.
Okay.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting, according to the source. The commentator alleges that NASA cuts a feed immediately after this object appears. And this isn't just brushed off as like a technical glitch. No, the source explicitly interprets this immediate feed cut as proof, their word, that NASA don't want us to see the truth and are actively trying to avoid disclosure. They even suggest people on the ground turned it off. That's a pretty heavy accusation, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
Taking an ambiguous event like a feed interruption and framing it as undeniable evidence of a deliberate cover-up.
Absolutely. That's a crucial point, and it's a pattern we see, frequently in the analysis of UAP footage. This feed cut claim isn't just an isolated interpretation. It's almost a textbook example of what we might call confirmation bias at play. See, when a narrative of government cover-up or hidden knowledge is already established in someone's mind, ambiguous events, like a video feed interruption, which honestly could just be a technical glitch, maybe planned downtime, they get immediately, perhaps subconsciously, interpreted as undeniable proof of that existing belief, instead of considering some maybe more mundane explanations alongside it.
So it fits the story they already expect.
Precisely. The source is essentially making an argument from ignorance fallacy. We can't explain why the feed cut, therefore it must be a cover-up. They even expand on this, bringing up Robert Bigelow's alleged massive research into UFO activity.
Yeah, I saw that.
And the claim that he suppressed MUFON, that's the usual UFO network for those who might not know, supposedly gain access and information, even stating it left MUFON in a bad place.
Wow.
So this immediately ties the specific ISS sighting into a broader, more entrenched narrative. Powerful entities hiding crucial information, actively working to prevent public disclosure about UFOs and advanced tech. It's not just presented as an object, it's framed as a piece of a much larger hidden puzzle, really designed to cultivate a sense of distrust in official explanations.
Okay, so from the vacuum of space, let's bring our focus a little closer to home, to the skies over Colorado. Our next piece of material features what the source calls incredible footage captured by Doug Goldstein. He used a Nikon 5100 night vision camera, apparently, to record what he describes as a huge UFO.
Night vision, okay.
Yeah.
That adds a layer.
Yeah. Doug, while leaving his apartment, noticed a light in the sky and conveniently was ready with his night vision camera. The commentator praises his ability to hold the camera steady and zoom in, giving viewers a close look at what he captured. The source describes the craft as being illuminated from the inside, which, already sets it apart from many conventional aircraft.
Illuminated from inside, right.
But it's the maneuvers that truly captivate the commentator. They describe the object performing unusual maneuvers, like tilting and rotating on a full vertical motion. They even exclaim, "That's incredible." When you hear about night vision footage showing unusual maneuvers, what technical things jump out to you?
That's a really great question because the type of camera used is highly significant here. Doug Goldstein's use of a Nikon 5100 night vision camera, well, it offers a unique perspective, definitely. But it's important to remember that night vision, while it amplifies ambient light, can also introduce visual artifacts. It can distort scale and make it incredibly difficult to accurately judge distance or even the true shape of an object against a dark, low-contrast sky.
So what looks huge might not be.
Exactly. It might be much smaller but closer, or distorted by the camera's own processing, or even just atmospheric conditions. And the source presents these specific visual observations, then immediately rules out conventional explanations like drones, based solely on those observations. The commentator strongly argues that these maneuvers dispel drone activity, suggesting it's not a conventional drone because it remains stable upon itself, despite these complex movements.
Right. They said if a drone starts to tilt, it'll basically move in that direction, implying this object somehow defies that.
Precisely. And that highlights the inherent challenge, really, of definitively identifying objects based only on visual characteristics from footage, especially night vision footage. And particularly when the observer or the commentator is making very strong claims about what can't be done by known technology. The interpretation leaps from unusual to impossible for known tech, and that forms the basis for the otherworldly or extraterrestrial speculation. It sort of places the burden of proof on anyone trying to offer a conventional explanation rather than on the person making the extraordinary claim in the first place.
Okay, moving on. Our deep dive now takes us across the Atlantic to Europe. There's a new video submitted by someone named Ash C., purportedly from Palma, Spain, or maybe Birmingham, UK. It was filmed on May 30th. This is another fascinating eyewitness account, placing the unknown right alongside the very familiar.
Okay, what happened here?
So Ash C. was initially filming the ground in clouds, apparently for a partner, watching an oncoming passenger plane. Standard stuff. Then, as the plane got closer and passed by, they noticed something else, something different. The source highlights this second strange aircraft flying nearby, describing its actions as phenomenal.
Phenomenal? Like how?
The commentator points out that this object was performing barrel rolls at approximately 35,000 feet, which, as you know, is typical cruising altitude for commercial airliners.
Barrel rolls next to a passenger jet at cruising altitude. That's certainly attention-grabbing.
Yeah, the thought of something doing complex aerial acrobatics like that right next to a passenger jet is definitely unnerving, and Ash's immediate reaction, according to the source, was to freak out. They thought the object was a missile, and expresses significant worry, even referencing an unspecified Egyptian air incident.
Ah, okay.
So this account really vividly captures the emotional impact, doesn't it? How does that kind of emotional reaction shape the interpretation of an event like this?
Oh, it absolutely does, and that's a critical component of how these narratives take hold and spread. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this account really underscores the significant psychological impact of witnessing unexplained phenomena. Particularly, like you said, when it occurs close to something as familiar and frankly sensitive as air travel. The source's immediate concern, the panic, the reference to past incidents like the Egyptian air incident, even if it's unspecified, it serves to evoke a powerful sense of real-world danger, potential catastrophe. It shows how readily we try to fit new, often ambiguous observations into existing frameworks of understanding, or in this case, fear.
Makes sense.
And the commentator then further asserts that these maneuvers were no way possible for a passenger, or I suspect a military one either.
Yeah.
So again, dismissing conventional explanations, fueling the notion that what was witnessed defies known aviation capabilities, which elevates its status to truly anomalous. Now, objectively, it's challenging to accurately judge complex maneuvers like barrel rolls from a single, probably distant ground-based viewpoint without any other data, like radar. But the emotional response solidifies the perceived extraordinary nature of the event for the witness and, by extension, for the audience watching the commentary. The emotional weight often becomes just as compelling, if not more so, than any visual detail in these accounts.
Okay, our final piece of material for this deep dive comes from Disclosure Radio. It was submitted by Patrick McCracken, featuring what is presented quite boldly as anti-gravity technology.
Okay, anti-gravity technology. That's a huge claim right there.
Right off the bat, yeah. Not just an unidentified object, but a specific type of advanced technology. This segment offers a close-up, they say, of what looks like to be anti-gravity technology from back on May 23rd, 2016. The source explicitly calls it an anti-gravity drone plane exposed again, which indicates this isn't seen as an isolated incident, but maybe a recurring phenomenon or type of craft.
Exposed again. Interesting phrasing.
The commentator suggests these are experimental aircraft in the skies over America, implying perhaps a secret terrestrial origin for this advanced tech, rather than necessarily extraterrestrial. Though they don't fully rule that out. They also note a significant increase in activity in New Jersey, claiming that Disclosure Radio has received a lot of submissions from that area, which they then present as kind of proof of this heightened activity.
Mm-hmm.
Expert, the jump here from unidentified object to anti-gravity technology is massive. What does that leak tell you about the narrative being constructed, especially when we're talking about technology that, well, as far as mainstream science goes, doesn't exist?
Well, what's fascinating here is precisely that leap, like you said. It's huge. The source moves beyond just trying to identify the object to speculating on the implications of such technology.
Mm.
Both its experimental, secret nature and also the commentator's expressed desire for technology like this in our hands, free to the public.
Ah, right, the free energy kind of angle almost.
It's sort of, yeah. It highlights that human tendency to not only seek explanations for the unexplained, but also to dream of the potential societal applications, benefits
Yeah.
of perceived advanced technology. Now, scientifically speaking, anti-gravity remains firmly in the realm of, well, theoretical physics and science fiction. There's no known physical principle currently that allows for it.
Right.
So, labeling something definitively as anti-gravity technology is a profound claim that really transcends mere observation. It's pure interpretation based on perceived motion, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
And that longing for this technology to be free to the public, it suggests a deep-seated belief that it's being intentionally withheld, which ties right back into that broader disclosure narrative we saw with the ISS footage earlier.
It all connects in their view.
Exactly. It underscores a sense of frustration, perhaps, that such capabilities might exist but aren't accessible for the common good. It reinforces the idea of hidden knowledge, suppressed innovation, and the claim of a hotspot, like New Jersey with a lot of submissions, that serves to create a kind of localized sense of validation within that community.
Mm-hmm.
It makes the extraordinary feel more common and therefore maybe more credible to those already inclined to believe. It's a way of saying, look, it's not just one person, it's happening all around us.
So, okay, let's try and wrap this up. What does this all mean for you, the listener, as you navigate these kinds of sources online? We've just explored 4 pretty distinct accounts, all presented as significant UFO or UAP sightings. Each one came with its own dramatic claims, unusual phenomena, alleged cover-ups, the existence of advanced, possibly secret technology. We went from triangular objects near the ISS and supposed NASA feed cuts to huge crafts doing seemingly impossible maneuvers over Colorado, then phenomenal barrel rolls next to airliners in Europe, and finally ending with explicit claims of anti-gravity drone planes over New Jersey. These sources, I mean, they're clearly aiming to convince you of the reality and the significance of these events, and they seem to do that by linking individual sightings to these larger, often quite emotionally charged narratives.
Indeed. We've definitely seen how the source material consistently interprets visual evidence, often quite selectively, how it dismisses conventional explanations sometimes very quickly, and almost always links these sightings to those broader narratives of government disclosure or secret projects. And the consistent call for opinions from their audience, asking, what do you think? That also illustrates how these narratives are shaped and reinforced within specific communities. It creates a collective understanding.
Yeah, a feedback loop.
Exactly. It really encourages us, and you, the listener, to think critically about how information is presented. What assumptions are being made when something is labeled unusual or impossible? And how should we approach evaluating claims when we're faced with something genuinely unexplained? The commentary often moves very, very quickly from observation to a strong assertion about the nature of the object or the intentions behind its supposed concealment, often bypassing the steps of rigorous inquiry, like considering alternative explanations or acknowledging ambiguities in the data. The true deep dive for you, the listener, might lie in dissecting how these narratives are built, not just what they claim is being seen.
So, a final thought then. Given this diverse range of phenomena described in these sources, from objects near the ISS to those doing barrel rolls near airliners, alleged anti-gravity craft, what specific additional evidence, maybe beyond just the commentator's interpretations or the initial eyewitness testimony, would you want to see? What would it take to move an unidentified observation into the realm of identified proof? Whether that proof points towards advanced terrestrial tech, something completely novel, or maybe even something else entirely. These accounts clearly want you to believe something extraordinary is happening. We encourage you, as always, to keep your eyes on the skies and perhaps more importantly, on the sources. Continue your own deep dive into the unexplained.